Hey, welcome to my bug out location. There's still a lot of work I gotta do here, but hey, one step at a time. Today you're going to learn why I believe that violent riots coming to a city near you are not only going to be intensifying in violence, but also intensifying in occurrences too. So let's jump right into this. Now, for those of you that regularly watch my channel, you know that I've been a police officer for almost 20 years now. And one thing I can really tell you is that the politics that really affect policing have changed lightning fast in just the last several months to the last couple years. Now, even though I've had this channel for several years now, you probably have noticed that whenever there is a controversial use of force or a controversial police action shooting that's getting plastered all over the news, you've probably noticed that I rarely ever talk about them. And that is because when that police action shooting first happens and it's still being plastered all over the news and everybody across the United States is in a big uproar about it, when those police action shootings first happen and everybody's weighing in on what they think about it, the simple fact is we just don't have enough information at that time to really form an intelligent decision on that. So besides not having enough information at that time to actually weigh in if that was a good or bad police shooting, also there's the fact that police departments, especially in the larger, more liberal cities, but police departments across the country have lowered their hiring standards over the past however many years in order to get more minority police officers. Now, before somebody goes pounding on their keyboard screaming that I'm a racist because I'm talking about police departments lowering their hiring standards in order to hire more minorities, I have no issue with police departments hiring more minorities. What I have an issue with is them lowering the hiring standards in order to build those numbers up. My personal belief is that if a city is, let's say, 50% black or 50% Latino, then their police department also needs to be 50% black or 50% Latino. A police force should always represent the area that they patrol. So my issue is not police departments hiring minorities. That is a good thing. My issue is them lowering their hiring standards, because when they lower their hiring standards, then they end up with substandard cops. So that is the second reason that you don't hear me weigh in or talk about controversial police action shootings, and that is because when one of those controversial shootings happen, I don't know anything about that officer that did that shooting. Was that a good and an experienced officer that did the shooting, where more than likely that would be a good shooting? Or was that officer a result of lowered hiring standards, so that officer may be a substandard officer and may not make the best decisions in a dangerous or stressful situation? But before we go forward, I want to kind of revisit just really fast again why I don't chime in on controversial police action shootings when they first happen. Again, when a controversial police action shooting first happens, while it's being plastered all over and everybody on social media is all in a big huge uproar about it, again, we just don't have enough information at that time to make an informed decision on if that was a good shooting or a bad shooting. Typically, when a controversial police action shooting is getting plastered all over the news, usually the only information we have at that time is a small snippet of a video that many times the media has edited to make the police action shooting look really bad, when many times once more information comes out, you find out it was actually a justified shooting. But whenever a police action shooting occurs, controversial or not, it is thoroughly investigated, usually by outside police agencies and also the prosecutor or the DA in that area. And these investigations just take time. And often it just takes time to get that information released, because the investigating agency still needs to interview witnesses, and they don't want to put information out that's going to be plastered all over the news that's going to taint that witnesses independent recollection of what they saw. To make it simple, if that does end up being a bad police action shooting, they want that witness's testimony in court against that police officer to not get thrown out in court because their memory was tainted. Folks, if you are one of the people that are actually buying into the media's false narrative that cops are actually out executing whoever they can or needlessly shooting people, I'm going to put a link to a website down below in the description box, and I'm going to invite you to click on that link. In that website, what it does is it aggregates police action shootings across the country, and it gives you the news story that you can click on. So what I'm going to invite you to do is just go down there and just click on these news stories. This website is not from a police department or anything like that. It aggregates all these police action news stories on police action shootings across the United States. Again, just randomly click on those news stories and read what happened behind that police action shooting. And what you will see is that we are not playing judge, jury, and executioner. You will see that we are not just running around shooting whoever we can, and you will also see that the people that we are shooting are almost every time armed with a deadly weapon and committing violence right before they get shot. And you will also finally see that the shooting of unarmed people is the exception and not the norm. And you will see that the shooting of armed and violent felons is actually the norm. But I think that that's about to change. I think that the norm of us shooting armed and violent felons instead of shooting unarmed people, I think that's about to change. I think that bad police action shootings actually are going to become the norm in the future, especially in the large liberal cities and not the smaller conservative areas, but this will be happening in the large, more liberal cities. And then when these bad police action shootings actually do become the norm or actually start occurring more regularly, I think the riots that we're seeing today will pale in comparison for the riots that are coming in the future, in probably the near future, and here is why. So the short answer is that we have a perfect storm brewing. First of all, we have these large liberal cities that are really throwing their officers underneath the bus. They're talking about defunding the police department, and the local elected officials there are also many times arresting and charging the cops when the cops do justified uses of force. And the local officials are throwing the officers underneath the bus like that to try to appease groups like the BLM and Antifa. And I just don't know if these elected officials get it or not, but you just cannot appease groups like that. So with these cities and these elected officials throwing their officers underneath the bus, a lot of the good police officers in these cities are saying, you know what, screw it, I'm out of here, I'm leaving, and I'm going to go to a different police department outside of this area that will actually have my back. And then when all of those good cops leave, then the local elected officials are going to replace those cops with these social justice warrior types. And folks, I have yet to meet an SJW that will actually make a good police officer that would be capable of making good decisions in dangerous situations. And then the other part of this perfect storm is, in the same cities where they throw the officers underneath the bus, those same elected officials also seem to not like to file charges against violent criminals. They seem like they like to let violent criminals out early or not even file charges against them to begin with. So then when you end up with an area that has a lot of emboldened violent criminals running around, and then a lot of social justice warrior type cops that wouldn't be able to make good decisions in dangerous situations, your bad police action shootings are going to probably go through the roof. Folks, we are living in times right now where good men are being vilified and violent criminals are being made out to be saints. And this type of mindset just makes the good cops say, screw it, I'm going elsewhere, and then ends up with a lot of emboldened criminals on your streets, and then the leftover cops that won't make good decisions and that will get involved in bad police action shootings. And another thing is these same cities that hammer their good cops and also release the violent felons out onto the streets, these are the same cities that usually hate self-defenders. These are the same cities that hate it when people use firearms to protect themselves. So then what you have to worry about then is, even if your state's law says that you can use a firearm to protect yourself if it's reasonable to do so, you still have to worry about that local DA or that local prosecutor still trying to misconstrue the state law to try to hammer you, the good person, just trying to protect yourself against the violent felons that the criminals have allowed to roam the streets. And that is just another reason why I always suggest self-defenders to always belong to some kind of a legal self-defense association like the USCCA, a legal self-defense association that will pay your bond or your bail should you get arrested, and also provide you free of charge an expert attorney in self-defense that will fight for you in court. One of the things about a self-defense expert from one of these legal self-defense associations is your attorney will be an expert in self-defense law, and they will know how to properly articulate to a jury of how your self-defense actions were reasonable and within your state law. That way, that jury gives you a victory, gives you a not guilty verdict, and you're able to hand a defeat to that crooked DA or that crooked prosecutor that tried to hammer you. So anyways, prepare now for massive riots and fires to be coming soon to a city near you. I really highly suggest that you move while you can. And even if you think that these riots and these fires will not affect you because you live outside of a riot-prone area, we always have to remember that in these cities, when the local politicians allow these riots to happen, and every time these local businesses, their windows get busted out and their businesses get burnt down, these businesses move. And then when these businesses are not paying taxes anymore, then the local elected officials then pass those taxes on to you so that they can keep their bloated form of government going. So once these cities turn violent and very dangerous, then your property value goes down, but then your taxes will go up. So not only will you be living in a violent area, but you'll be living in an area where you're getting taxed to death just the same. So folks, why don't you comment down below with your thoughts on my assessment of this? Do I have this right or am I completely wrong? And to learn why it will be deadly for rioters when they start hitting the suburbs, then click on the video that should be appearing on the screen just about now to gain that knowledge. All right, that's enough internet for today. It's time to go train. And folks, if you made it this far, hey, thank you very much for watching. And I pray that you have a good night.